You are watching and listening to an episode of Leaders and Engineers. I'm Alderhan Yusupov and we're broadcasting from Tallinn, Estonia. Today our guest is an expert in software engineering and web development with a strong expertise in Ruby on Rails. He studied computer science at the Université de Franche-Comté, is it correct pronunciation?
Right.
And has about 12 years of experience of developing e-commerce platforms, marketplaces, online video games, content management systems, accounting software, booking systems, and so on. He lived and worked in United States, Paris, London, Berlin, and worked on such projects as Doctors, a booking platform in Morocco, and bookandgolf.com in France. He also is a mentor at the Code Testers Club, teaching programming to Estonian pupils, and he is also in the top 4% of Stack Overflow contributors on topics related to Ruby on Rails, which is a web app framework based on the model view controller pattern implementation. In 2020, he co-founded Morning.co, a platform helping to manage personal wealth and investments, starting from stocks and crypto and ending with real estate. Now his platform has about 64,000 users with a total wealth and investments volume of more than 600 million euro. He lives in Estonia and works as CTO at Morning.co and also provides private consultancy by his company Epsilon. Please meet Nicolas Blanco.
Thank you for the introduction, Nadir.
Was it all?
Yeah, you said everything, so how we can finish the podcast?
Well, hopefully not. This is just the beginning. So how do you do? What are the latest interesting things you have seen or did?
So like you said, right now I'm working full-time on my what began as a side project. Mm-hmm. So Morning began as a side project, and now I'm working full-time on it. Mm-hmm. So like you said, I'm an engineer, and I work for many different startups as an employee, then as a freelancer, and now I'm very happy to be able to work full-time on my own project and not the projects of others. So that's really a dream as an engineer, to be able to work for your own project.
Well, I can imagine. But if you speak about these projects, what was the one that you are most proud of? Is it the latest Morning.co or some other project?
Yes, I think it's mostly Morning.co, because it's like all the experience that I was able to learn from the previous work experiences in many different kind of startups, not only in mostly I really like SaaS, building SaaS platforms. So that's really something that I like to do. But even before we were all talking about SaaS, we were already building websites, right? And SaaS is just like, for me, SaaS is just like the continuation of the web platforms that we were already building many years ago. So basically, it's, for me, Morning represents all the experience from all my previous experiences building SaaS platforms, web platforms, etc. Mm-hmm. And also, what is nice when you build your own project is that you can begin it with exactly the technology that you like to use as an engineer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll talk more about this your tech stack, and especially this Ruby on Rails. Mm-hmm. But before we go to this main part of this interview, I noticed that you have certificates of open water scuba instructor and emergency first response instructor. Mm. So it's like kind of good addition to your skills of a software developer. Did you plan to live and do programming on a ship?
Yeah. So it's a funny topic. Basically, at some point in my life, I was working in Paris for many years, and at some point, working in Paris, as working in any big capital, you feel the need to just go out of this big capital because everybody is running. Like the life is quite strong right there. So at some point I wanted to leave this big capital and also to improve my spoken English because as you can understand, I'm French and I was not used to speak English. So I also wanted to improve my English. I decided to leave Paris and to travel around the world. And for many months, my goal was to see if I was able to have what we call the digital nomad life. If I could continue to work on the project of my customer and at the same time work in different countries, travel the world, see if I could also meet interesting people. And when I was in Thailand, my main hobby was to scuba dive. So I was scuba diving a lot in Thailand, and I found a really nice club there, and I scuba dive a lot. And I every 2 or 3 months I was passing the next level in scuba diving, because in scuba diving, as you know, you have different levels. And then at the end, I passed the scuba diving instructor level. But yeah, it was a great time. And I think as an engineer, sometimes you are very focused on your work, and it's nice to not forget your hobbies and still manage to have some time for your hobbies and to change your mind. Yeah. So that was a nice way of changing my mind from the engineering.
Do you still do scuba diving in the nearby seas, or maybe Mediterranean Sea?
Yeah. So in Europe, Mediterranean Sea is a good spot to do scuba diving. For me, the best spot to do scuba diving is still the Red Sea in Egypt, because it's quite near. It's quite easy to go there from Europe to go to the Red Sea. And otherwise you have to travel too much, right? You have to go to Asia, you have to go to Australia to have the really nice scuba diving spots. But yeah, right now, because I'm full resident in Estonia, it's a bit more difficult to do scuba diving. There are a very few scuba diving spots in Estonia. But yeah, I'm waiting for the summer to scuba dive again.
Well, I agree with you about Red Sea, because I also tried there, and I really like the seabed. There are so many interesting things to see. It's very vibrant life in the Red Sea. So many different species and fishes and these corals.
Yeah, and also just a few words: the variety of dives, of the kind of dives that you can do is amazing, because you can dive on cliffs, you can dive in wrecks. You have a lot of wrecks. If you don't want to dive deep, you don't have to dive deep also. So you can also dive shallow. So the variety of the kind of dives that you can do in the Red Sea is truly amazing.
Well, great that you have this different from what would you be doing, like working over a computer and sitting, some kind of more active thing. Now I want to propose you to do the small cap job interview, and you've probably seen in the previous podcast. And so basically people will still get to know you and your view, but then also see the flow of typical job interview for the leadership position. And yeah, the company doesn't exist, and position also doesn't exist, and product doesn't exist. So it's all imaginary. But the questions are quite similar to what would be in the real job interview. And then I will say at some point that we are done with this job interview, and I'll ask your feedback. Was it similar to your previous experience in life, and what are your overall impressions?
Okay, great. Let's do that.
You ready? Great. So starting this job interview. Hello, Nicolas. Thank you for applying for the leadership position in our Intergalaxy software engineering company.
I'm happy to be there with you also.
Glad to hear that. And recently, a group of aliens made a contact with us, via intergalaxy Zoom call. They want to conquer our planet, and they need the help for that. So they want us to develop for them educational platform where they could learn about human weaknesses and how to exploit them. And our expectation would be that you, as a Chief Technology Officer, would lead a team of intergalaxy software developers and help these wonderful aliens to conquer our planet. And you will see this on your screens, how it all looks like. Here I will show the visualization. So right now they have some kind of books from the planet Earth, but that's why they would need some...
I don't know if you can see that on the video.
They will see it.
Okay, great. Yeah.
I'll edit when I will be editing. So yeah, this is the image. Basically, there is the classroom and these wonderful aliens. They're preparing to conquer our planet.
So right now they are using books, but the goal is to digitalize that, right?
Digitalize to make it more interactive. So like proper platform to learn about human weaknesses.
Okay.
And how to exploit them.
Okay.
And this is generated by Stable Diffusion AI.
Yeah.
And basically my prompt was aliens are sitting in classroom and studying about human beings. I actually said on their desks they have tablets with pictures, but AI still put the books.
Interesting.
It's always several attempts. It's never like the first prompt. It's always trial and error.
Yeah.
But I think it's getting pretty well in the making it very realistic. So my first question: why did I apply for this position?
Why did I apply for this position? Good question. Oh my God, I'm not used anymore to job interviews.
And not just job interviews, but probably the one which asking you to help aliens to conquer planet.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, if I was applying for like a real job interview, I would have read information on the company, and I would have said something like
this is fine. Where like imagining.
Yeah,
use your imagination.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, I went on your website. I was quite impressed by what you're trying to do and to build. Then I checked a bit your technology stack. I was also impressed by the technology that.
Which projects in our portfolio you like the most?
I would say what you're trying to build right now, the project about trying to digitalize the information of all the humans on the planet and the DNA and everything. It's a great challenge to do that, and I think I will be able to help you for this challenge. But because as I understand that there are a lot of information, you're also working on some big data, so all the topics that I like, and I like challenges, so I'm really happy to.
But what I'm saying would be like top 3 human weaknesses that would be helpful to aliens to conquer basically our planet.
I think that's the kind of information that you would try to get from all the data, right? And from all the data that you are acquiring right now. So I will be happy to help you aggregate all these data so that you can have a better view on what will be the top 3 weaknesses, so that you can attack Earth later.
So you prefer to wait for this data rather than making already some kind of conclusion?
Maybe I can ask you some question about the amount of data that you currently have, and how you are currently aggregating this data, the systems that you are using, the way that you are.
But let's say this is in the roadmap to connect all this data and then visualize and present. But if before we have all that, your like personal view, what are those top 3 human weaknesses? If you, take from your experience, from your observations, the most common ones.
Good question. Maybe I would say greed. Maybe I would say 3 weaknesses in the human race. Right? That's really that could be really philosophical question. We are not more in IT stuff, but more in philosophy, right? Yeah, greed. Probably the. Nah, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
But if you speak about your personal, maybe top 3 weaknesses, it's of course not mandatory. Like if you don't want to answer that, it's fine. But do you know those?
My own weaknesses?
Yeah, the top 3 weaknesses, or something that you want to improve, change in yourself.
I would say that I'm someone very, very open. But sometimes like open, but maybe I'm sometimes disclosing more information that I shouldn't when I'm talking with people. I'm someone that is usually when I meet new people, I'm trusting them until I have an issue with them. So I'm always discussing and telling what I'm doing and telling information. And I understand that for some kind of job where you have to be more secret about the stuff that you're doing. So for example, if I see myself working for a company like Apple, which is like really secret on the projects, that they are currently working on, maybe I wouldn't be. Maybe it will take me some time to adapt to this kind of secrecy, because I really enjoy talking about what I'm doing and the stuff that I'm doing, the technology that I'm using, the information. So yeah, that's why.
Well, this is probably depends on the situations. It's also can be quite a strong positive characteristic.
Yeah, I mean it depends on the business and the company where you are working on, and for me, I always learned as an entrepreneur when you have ideas. I mean, one of the issue with some entrepreneurs is sometimes they don't want to share their ideas. Like they are really secretive. They think that someone will steal their ideas, right? And as an entrepreneur, it's the contrary that you should do. It's that you shouldn't be afraid of sharing your ideas. I mean, an idea cannot be patented, right? And if you have a good idea, you're not the first one to have it. So because I learned that, I really like to speak about my ideas. I'm not afraid of like someone stealing my idea and becoming a competitor. I'm open to competition and to share ideas. But like I said, in some company where you have like a culture of secret, like Apple, working for many years on secret projects. If I was an engineer, an employee at Apple, I don't know how I could manage this culture of secrets very long time. And I hope they have processes for new employees to adapt to this culture of secret. Yeah.
So if I understood correctly, you would rather prefer transparent working culture.
Yeah, that's something that I really enjoy, and that's also something that I find in Estonia is this that I like in Estonia also is this transparency. I mean, Estonia is also very transparent in the way they handle companies. Like in Estonia, everything is open. You can get information of any company. You can get the reports. Everything is open. So I think that's also part of the Estonian culture, to be open and to be transparent. Yeah. Mm.
And if you speak about your journey into the software engineering and web development, how did it all start? What motivated you to go on this path?
That's a great question. I think what motivated me to go to this path is my father buying the first computer in the home when I was a child, and for the old ones watching this podcast, maybe they remember it was an Atari ST. So it was really the beginning of personal computing. You had to use like floppy disk. You had to load floppy disks.
You said it was Atari.
It was an Atari ST. Oh. And I remember at this time there were this competition between Atari and Amiga. And my father decided to buy an Atari ST, and I really enjoyed discovering this computer. I was always trying to see how it was working, and I remember that it was sold with a lot of floppy disks, with not only games but also tools, and I was more interested in the tools than in the games. And very, very fast, I was interested to understand how I could program on this computer and to make it do the things that I wanted to do. And I remember I wrote my first my first lines of programming in BASIC, in GFA BASIC on the Atari ST. And after that, I was just interested to continue learning how to develop. And then after that, there were the boom of internet. Internet arrived in whole homes in France. And as soon as internet arrived, I was already interested to know how I could develop my own websites, how I could build something on internet, you know. Okay, so if I still enjoy doing engineering today, and I would say, of course, it's still in my DNA to be an engineer. I still enjoy building stuff. I still enjoy building web stuff that is running on the web. That's really like a motivation for me. But as a founder of a SaaS platform, today I have to do everything. I also have to deal with marketing. I also have to deal with all those different fields around the SaaS platform, because you can have an amazing product, but if there's no marketing, if there's no community management, you don't make sales. So basically, I still enjoy a lot engineering, but my position makes that I also have to deal with the other kind of topics around.
But you like this diversity, that you basically wearing different hats. It's not too overwhelming for you?
I mean, that's something that you need to do. That you need to be interested in if you want to build if you want to go from an engineer to a successful product, even if later you Of course, later your goal is to automatize the most processes that you can. The goal is to delegate also. You have to know, you have to understand that you have to delegate. But at some point in the life of your project, you'll have to do a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm.
But what were your main learnings from the marketing world? Or how would you market your product? If you, let's say, summarize maybe in 3 or 5 key takeaways.
What I learned in marketing is the power of building a community around your project. It's something that is really powerful. Very often you build a product and you focus on the engineering, and something that is really important is to manage to build a good community around your product. It doesn't need to be like thousands of users, but you have to work on building your community around the project. So talk about what you're trying to do, talk about your life, talk about the challenges that you have on social media. Try to build a small community of people who are interested into you, interested into your project, interested in what you're doing, and that will be really helpful when you will be trying to make your first sales, right? Mm-hmm.
So basically, having the network of so to say followers and
yeah.
All right,
and that's amazing, because you can manage if you are really passionate and working enough. You can do that even if you're not even if you're working from the countryside. You don't really need to be in a big city. Of course, it's still amazing to build like a concrete network of physical people that with who you can directly communicate, because of course it's still better to meet new people in real life and not only online. So it's still great. It's still maybe something amazing at the beginning. Also, when you have a lot of questions about everything, to be in the capital or at least a medium-sized city, but it's still possible today to build a small community around your project, even if you're not in a big city.
I noticed in the morning you have like a kind of community manager.
Mm-hmm.
Was it like when you were developing morning platform and you were thinking about your go-to-market strategy, did you think about this from the beginning, or it was in the process you learned and you added that there should be community manager and there should be more interaction?
Yeah, it was on the process, like you said. First, I tried to build a community by myself, because I wanted to learn. I wanted to use the tools and to understand the process before trying to delegate it. Because I wanted to have a feel and try different ways of doing before I would choose a person, and I would say to this person, okay, I tried multiple things and this way for me it's working the best, but maybe later you will find maybe even better ways of doing the community management. You will find maybe even better tools to do that. So I created a Twitter account from zero, and then I also tried to build this Twitter account. And after this Twitter account had some followers, I had a feel of what was working. The interesting point is that I didn't even choose someone that was a community manager or marketing guy. I just choose someone who I trusted, and this guy today is doing an amazing job. And he didn't even know about a lot about Twitter when I decided to make him the community manager. So I think that's a good lesson. Someone, if you trust, often if you trust someone, and this guy is or this woman is really into your product, they can maybe become a great community manager or someone good at doing it.
Definitely. But the other question I want to ask also is about your experience of living in different places.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been in different cultural contexts. You lived in London, Paris, Berlin, Tallinn, and how would you compare those different locations and your experience of working and living there?
Mm-hmm. So as a French guy and working in IT at the beginning, I had at some point in my life, and I also knew that I would have to live in Paris for some time, because in France, everything is centralized. Everything is centralized around Paris. So it's a good and a bad thing at the same time. And I went from the east of France to Paris, and I worked there for many years before being annoyed at that and wanted to travel a bit. So I had my first big capital experience in Paris, and also in Paris it's quite fast to go to London, because you have this train, it's Eurostar. So sometimes I was going to London, so I could get a feel of the two big capitals in the West Europe, right? But when you live there, I think it's good at some point in your life, like at the beginning of your professional life, between 20 to 30, maybe. It's as an engineer, you can really have a great experience, and also you can jump from. What is nice when you live in a big capital like London or Paris as an engineer is that you can easily jump from one startup to another. You're not staying unemployed for a long time if you are good, because there are so many startups in many different fields. And that's also what's amazing, is that you don't only have startup working in one field, but today all the kind of startups, they need engineers, they need web developer, they want to have a good they need to have good software. It doesn't matter if it's internal or external or public. So as an engineer, it's amazing. You can jump from one startup to another very fast, and you can also use that to increase your salary as you gain experience. So that's why as an engineer, it can be a booster in the beginning of your professional life. But of course, as you reach like around 30, you're like, okay, now maybe I want a more peaceful life. I want maybe to build a family, and or maybe you're like me, you also want to improve your spoken English, because that was one of the points that I wanted also, to travel around to see if I could have this digital nomad style life and improve my English, continue to meet people, and see if I could live by traveling at the same time and still getting money from my customers.
And so far you lived in the European capitals.
Yeah.
And but you see yourself, of course you said you did this scuba diving in Thailand, the Red Sea. Do you see yourself also living in Asia or some non-European country, in the sense that would you be fine with the environment, which is a bit more chaotic and less ordered compared to what you see in Europe? Or you like when it is you feel like more calm and safe when you are in places like Berlin or London?
I would say that maybe when you are young, before 30, I mean, it was my case. I was really happy to travel and discover different cultures, different kind of cities which are more calm, cities which are more small, big cities, Asian cities where you have like a lot of excitation 24 hours a day, right? And the city never sleeps. So that was really interesting to do when I was traveling around the world, discover different cultures. And also I was really happy to discover about California and the Silicon Valley, where everything began, right? The software, all the big companies like Microsoft.
You worked there on this Munchery, right? This food delivery in that region.
At some point I worked for a startup that was doing food delivery, and the startup was called Munchery, if I'm not wrong. Mm-hmm. And they were localized in San Francisco. So I was working remotely for them, but it was really nice to meet them, meet the team, and go to San Francisco, stay some time there. And the kind of business that they were doing was interesting because, I mean, it's a B2C product. As an engineer, it's also nice when you work on a B2C product, something that is directly impacting the end customers. That's something interesting. Mm-hmm. And also food. The topic of food is always is always nice. And also building a food delivery can be quite challenging in terms of the technology, the stacks, the communications that you need to build for everything to work together, because you need to also to build some. It's not only about building just a client and a server, and because you also need to manage the paths of the couriers that are delivering the food. So you have also mathematical challenges, and not only it's not only just about doing create, update, delete in a database, right? You have interesting challenges when you build this kind of application.
I think that was not just that, as you mentioned, software, but exactly these algorithms were the main innovation from Uber. And I think they're still, I don't know if they're leaders, but definitely one of the leaders in developing these mathematical algorithms on finding the shortest path. And from technology stack, you worked most of your career with the Ruby on Rails.
Exactly.
What is attracting you in this? How you decided that you want to develop most of the projects with this tech stack?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. When I began to do web development, it was many years ago, and at this time, PHP was really, because PHP was one of the very first technology to build websites, web applications. PHP is still the tech stack and the language that is used in big open source engines like WordPress and e-commerce technology. But when I began to use PHP, it was kind of a mess. Like everything was, there were no clean structure to build an application. It was really in the beginning of 2000. Year 2000 to 2005, and I discovered Ruby on Rails just at the beginning of Ruby on Rails, before it was well known, before it was used by a lot of startups like Airbnb, and Ruby on Rails was from the start built to provide a good structure to your applications and your web applications. And it was
MVC pattern.
Yeah, it was using this MVC pattern. But what was nice is it was right in the middle between messy technology like PHP. I'm not criticizing PHP like right now, because right now it has really evolved in the good direction. But at this time, and it was right between Ruby on Rails was right between PHP and really enterprise frameworks like Java Bean or Java, and it was still really and why was Ruby on Rails so successful is that it was providing a way to prototype applications, web application, really fast, and at the same time with some nice structure. So it was mixing the fast and easy factor with the structured structure at the same time, and that's why I think it was really successful. And at this time, it was really the beginning of big web platforms like Airbnb, Twitter, LinkedIn, all those, and it was like also the beginning of big social networks. And people wanted to have something where they could prototype stuff fast and at the same time have some structure. And I think that's why Ruby on Rails was a success.
Do you think Flutter or maybe some other other kind of rivals, competitors to this Ruby on Rails?
I'm just waiting.
Okay. Oh, what would you be calling as the kind of alternative to Ruby on Rails?
Okay, I wouldn't say that. In my point of view, what happens is after those MVC frameworks, we add this all this SPA, single page application that appeared. When SPA appeared, everybody wanted to build web application that are fast, that are responsive at the same time, and where the page is not reloading every time you click on a button, right? Because with classical MVC framework, every time the user is doing an action, the page reloads, and it's not really dynamic, right? And after this period of MVC and framework, we had this period of building SPA applications, and basically in SPA applications, for the one who don't know, you have a client and you have a server, and the client can be a web application in JavaScript running on the browser, or it can be a mobile application. And then you have the server, and basically, usually both are communicating by sending and receiving JSON. And one of the issue with the SPA approach is that you lose a bit this fast prototyping approach, because as soon as you want to build a prototype and you know that you will be building a SPA, you directly need to build two applications at the same time. You need to build the client, and you need to build the front, and you need to build an API in between. And because you need to have two applications, you already have some challenges, because you always need the client to be synced with the front already at the beginning of your application. So that's why it's something that for me is a bit a drawback, from the period where it was really easy to prototype something with just one MVC framework like Ruby on Rails. I don't know if that answers your question, or maybe you.
Yeah, but just if you speak specifically, let's say, about Flutter.
Yeah.
in which category you are putting this one? Because as far as I know, Flutter is kind of this pattern agnostic.
Yeah.
In the sense.
For me, technology like Flutter or React Native is more like a client side framework, right? It's more like a stack that you decide to use on the client side to help you build multi-platform stuff, right? And some developers, some engineers will decide to use React Native because they are more in this React ecosystem. Some other engineers will prefer to use a technology like Flutter. I don't know a lot about Flutter. I know how it's working. I know that it was made by Google. I know that it's using this Dart language, and I know that compared to React Native, it's more fluid because it compiles to
machine level.
It really compiles compared to React Native, which is executed by a JavaScript runtime working locally on the device. But aside from that, I'm not specialized on this. And right now on my project, I don't have the resource of working on a mobile application. So I'm still looking in the mobile technology because I know that at some point I will have to build a mobile application.
Or maybe for this Vision Pro.
Exactly, or probably, I'm not sure about that. But yeah, that's also interesting because it was just released a few days ago. Yes. And everybody is talking about that in the tech world.
And I see a lot of, for developers, there's a lot of already released SDK. And Apple is, of course, supporting for people to create apps there.
Yeah. So just to finish on this topic, I know that at some point I will have to build a mobile application for modeling. I still don't know if I will use React Native, if I will use Flutter. I'm still trying those different technology. Yeah. But right now I'm focused on building an amazing mobile application, and an application that is responsive and which will work also well on mobile. Because I'm still sure that the first step is to build something that is working well on mobile. If you're building an application, if you can manage to build a great web application, is really the first step before trying to build an Android, an iOS application. Try to build a really great web mobile application, because also today a few years ago it was not possible to send notifications. It was not possible to use the GPS. I mean, some feature on mobile were not available at all for web applications. But I know it's taking time because, of course, Apple and Google, they don't want to open their APIs because they want developers to build native application because they want to have native application on their stores and they want to make money from that. But still, it's still pushing, and today it's possible to send notifications, even if it's not, and even if the user experience is not as amazing as a native application, it's still possible to use some of the mobile features like the camera, the GPS notifications.
Sure. So if I summarize basically what you say, it's if there are different platforms and you want to target them, you suggest to go first with the web and web mobile.
Yeah.
And then start going into this native Android.
I mean, of course, unless you want to build something that must be a mobile application. Of course, if you want to build like a video game, but most of the tools, most of the business applications. I don't see a lot of applications that need to be mobile, native mobile first, right? Because now you can even use web push, those kind of technology where you can push information directly, and you don't need to build a native application unless you're trying to build a video game, unless you're trying to build the next Spotify where you're doing streaming music and stuff. But even streaming music, you can do it directly as a web application today, right?
But also, when it comes to software engineering, there is now emergence of different AI tools, starting with this Copilot from GitHub and many other ones. How do you see now and in future trend? How is it going to change the software engineering? Will it replace certain categories of software engineers eventually?
That's a hot topic, right? How AI will change the job of engineers. And there are a lot of debates on LinkedIn, on the social networks. And what we can see right now is that right now, AI can really help us build a specific portion of the code. So AI can help us build a very specific portion of the code, or can be used to even to explain a small portion of the code. It can be used to write unit tests on a very specific portion of the code. Right now, it's still difficult for AI to have a global view on the whole project, right? Now the question is when we will be able to use AI on a whole project and not only a small portion of a code. There are still debates about AI is still not possible to use AI to really refactor the code, because to refactor the code you need to have a global vision on the whole project, because maybe the way you will refactor the code is by moving some parts of the code to another file, and it's still difficult for AI to have a global view. But this specific point, I think, will probably be handled better in the future. So that's a good question. What I like to say is that very often in the development community, there's this question about what's the difference between a junior engineer and a senior engineer. And me, what I like to say to answer this question is a junior engineer likes to write code, and a senior engineer likes to delete code. And I think that's really answers the question. For me, a good developer will not enjoy precisely writing code, but he will be super happy when he will be able to remove a big portion of code, make the code cleaner, and at the same time make the code still work. The feature, it should be still the same features, but if you can manage to remove a big chunk of code, usually that's when I'm happy, right? And for me, that's really the difference between a junior and a senior engineer. Yeah.
You are teaching programming to pupils through this Codester.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the advantages and disadvantages that you see from that? And would you recommend every parent to give their kids to programming courses?
Okay, great question. Yes, so basically in Estonia, I'm part of Coasters.club, and Coasters.club is a non-profit organization, and the goal of this organization, this non-profit, is to place mentors in high schools, so public high schools in Estonia, not private, really public high schools. And our goal as mentors is to make the students aware of this startup ecosystem and the way startups are building digital product. So it's not only about coding, it's also about understanding how to create the UI or to have a great user experience. It's also about project management. So it's all the different aspects of building a digital product. And that's something amazing for the mentor. So for me as well, because you go back to high school. So sometimes it brings me also some memories when I was in school. It's also good to as an engineer to share your knowledge. So it's an amazing way of feeling that you are useful to society, and that you are not only working for yourself on your own profit, but you can also give back a bit to the society, and it feels really great. And of course, there are also challenges of doing that because you also have to improve on the way you are explaining, on the way you are talking, because you're talking to teenagers and not to adults. So it also brings some challenges, but it's still really fun to do. It's something that I really enjoy to do, to share my knowledge, and to feel that I'm still that I can be useful to society.
I heard several times from various software engineers that they were saying they're already tired from programming, or they're too old for that. And so it was this impression that it's some kind of muscle. And then it's like the best times maybe like in sports, in the younger age. And there is this like certain period where you are really performing well in this programming.
Mm-hmm.
And then at later stage when you're senior, then you might be not so good into writing the code, but you might be good as architect.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree, or what's your thought about it?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it's related to what I was just saying before. Like for me as a senior engineer, you don't only like to write new code, you also like to refactor the old code, make it work with less lines, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bit related to this question, and I think it's also something personal, right? I know some engineers, some developers who still enjoy writing code and doing tech stuff even after 60 years old.
Yeah.
And some engineers, they prefer to slowly move to just being an architect, or being someone who will maybe manage a team of engineers.
Mm-hmm.
And only be the bad guy who is poking on the pull request on GitHub. I'm joking.
Great. Now coming back to the position that you're applying. So just remind that we need to develop the educational platform, so aliens will learn quickly about the weaknesses about human beings and can exploit them to conquer the planet. And here are the questions that I'll ask you. They are generated by ChatGPT.
Oh.
And
okay.
How I basically made is that how I introduced you and then this company. I gave this prompt to the ChatGPT and I said that you are my HR assistant, help me to ask the right questions. So here are the questions from the ChatGPT. If the aliens expressed interest in learning programming languages, how would you design a curriculum to teach them, and which programming language do you think would be most beneficial for their conquest goal, for the goal of conquering the planet?
Wow. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
So, if aliens they say they want to learn programming. How would you design this learning program for them? Which programming language you would suggest them? But with the purpose to conquer this planet.
I will tell them to use the Codesters platform, the Codesters platform that we are currently building at Codesters. But yeah, it was a side joke, right? But yeah, that's interesting because that's exactly what we are doing at Codesters. We are also trying to build a platform where students they can
just replace pupils with aliens. Then it's same.
Yeah, so we are, at Codesters, we are using an open source platform that is customized for students. So probably we could use the same open source platform and customize it for aliens. And the platform is quite, in terms of what they are doing on it, it's quite simple. We have one trimester is divided in a few blocks, and in each block is basically 1 week, and in 1 week you have you can have a few pages of lessons, some knowledge where they have to know. Of course, the page can contain external links, so if they need to go to some external knowledge in external site to get more information about what they are learning. And then they can have some exercise, and then when they do some exercise, they can provide the links. So we are also using replits, for example, for the coding. So the student, but now the aliens could do the coding exercise on Replit, and then they can share the links of their work on the platform. And then as mentor, we can check the submissions at the end of the week. We can grade them. And what are the challenges as mentors about that is, of course, to build the platform in a nice way so that students are happy to go on the platform. It's also challenging to always ask them to go on the platform on a daily or at least a weekly basis. And of course, we have this challenge of AI right now, because when you teach a new programming language, you are really at the beginning. So basically the task that you are doing is the task that an AI can do very easily and in a good way. So we are not trying to tell them to not use AI at all. We are trying to see how we can integrate the AI in the process. But that's also a lot of questions. We still want the student to understand the basics of programming, because the foundations are really important. As a student, you need to have the good foundations. So if you just use AI without understanding the foundations, it's not great. But for the most advanced exercise or the most advanced task, how we can integrate also AI in the tasks, and AI should be used as an assistant to kind of guide you in the task that you are doing, and not something that will replace your knowledge on the foundations and the basics. Mm-hmm. And for the question about the programming language, as my own experience, I would say a programming language that is I like some programming language, like I said, like Ruby, Python, because they provide a good and easy to understand syntax. Because the syntax of Python, the syntax of Ruby is quite friendly to the eye, right? It's when you don't know anything about programming, you can look at a line of Ruby and it's almost as you can read it. Whereas languages that are based on the C syntax, like JavaScript, C, C++, C#, Java, etc., they are more difficult to read because you have all these semicolons, brackets, etc.
I really like in this Python that many things you can get by with this indentation.
Yeah.
Because in Dart it's help.
Yeah, in
with
Python you can. In Python you don't have you close the block by the indentation, right?
Yes. Because in Dart it's a hell to debug with these brackets and to find out where you didn't close properly and in which scope it is.
Yeah, that's always an issue when you have a block inside the block inside the block inside the block, and then you lose the. But maybe the problem is that if you have a block inside the block inside the block, it's maybe
you need to refactor.
Yeah, the code smell, right? You maybe need to refactor your code.
And aliens, our customers, how would you manage their expectations and communicate technical challenges and limitations? Let's say they want this platform, and but you see that there are certain things that you cannot implement, and how would you basically even like exactly what you can model what you will say to them?
Yeah,
you can speak English; it will be automatic.
It will be translated into alien language. So the way you communicate to your customers about the features, the next features, or how you handle the feedbacks of your customers, or because there are many questions.
Well, basically, customer wants something, but you say, "Well, sorry, this is not possible because of this and that."
And the way you communicate about that?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Have you had this kind of experience where you basically had to cool down your customer on their expectations and saying what is possible and what is not possible?
About the customer feedbacks, for some time I was using like a rule in the first book of 37 Signals about web development is what is the best way of handling feedbacks from your users. And in this book, the rule was that at the beginning of your product, you're getting many feedbacks, but it's not possible to handle all the feedbacks that you're getting. And if you're trying to build a tool that will please everybody, at the end you create a tool that is pleasing nobody, right? You need to you need to have a vision on your product and all the feedbacks that are coming can be some sort of noise. So in this rule, in this chapter of this web, I think the book is called Agile Web Development from 37 Signals. It's the first book that they released, and it's free, so you can download it, and it still contains a good summary of when you are building your own tool and you don't have a lot of resources, you don't have a lot of people around you to help you. So it's really at the very early stage of your product, and it still contains a lot of good advices, even if it was written some years ago. And they were saying that at the beginning, it's even better not to handle feedbacks at all, because they were saying that you will know when you will have to implement some new feature, because you will get this feedback a lot. And if you're just getting one feedback from someone, you don't even have to record it somewhere. You don't even have to create a ticket for it. Just don't try to memorize all the feedbacks that you are getting. Because if something is really important to users, you will get the same feedback a lot, and you will not forget it. You will know when to build. The next big feature, because you will get this feedback a lot. So that was one of the chapters that I remember from 37 Signals. I'm not sure if this is I'm answering your question correctly, like the way you handle feedbacks at the beginning.
Well, it is, but it's not maybe just kind of feedback. It's maybe, well, it is feedback, but it's just that the communicating something kind of like a negative feedback to the customer, because customer says, I want this, but you are not giving positive results.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Of course, you need to answer. You need to find a way to answer the customers and tell them that you are. So your question is more about how you answer to a customer while knowing that you will not work on on the feature so soon, right?
yes.
Yeah, it's all about it's about finding the good words. So it's more like copywriting.
But can you say, let's say, straight away, or you would actually need to consult with, I don't know, ChatGPT?
Yeah, that's true. That you may use. I mean, this is where ChatGPT can be useful, because you can directly type, okay, I want to be nice when answering a customer, while knowing that I will not be able to implement this feature soon. And I think ChatGPT will write you a good kind of message. But I think, yes, it's all about saying to your customers that you have taken his feedback into consideration, that you will not forget his feedback, but to also tell him that unfortunately you will not be able to work in the short term, but that you keep his feedback into memory, and that you will still contact him later if you manage to implement the feature. I'm not sure that's the best marketing or copywriting way to answer this question to a user. That's our customer, but that's all how I will do it.
But moving from customers, from employees, if you had an employee and now it's maybe not so much about the feedback, but you want to keep that employee. That employee is really good, like having top skills. But you see that basically employees thinking about leaving you. What will you do to keep the person? What will you do to retain that employee?
Yeah, that's a good question. It never really happened to me personally, and that's about how you can retain an employee who you like, who you are satisfied of the work. Maybe one question will be, maybe it's already too late if the employee consider leaving. Maybe you were not proactive enough already, but it can also mean, I mean, it's maybe a personal decision where you don't have any influence on it, right? Because maybe he wants to go away to follow something that is strictly personal, or that's a big question. And it's also, and if he's leaving because of other reasons that could have been avoided, it's all about being more proactive into understanding the needs, and improve the culture of your company, the work culture of your company, how you can make. This is a global question about how you can keep engineers happy in your company, right? How to understand when your employees could be less stressed about the work, improve the processes, improve the communication, see if they are not too much hierarchy in your company, in your startup already.
You worked in different companies, like small and big ones.
Yeah.
What are the like key takeaways, lessons learned you made in terms of like to create the best environment for the people to work?
Yeah, it's not only about having a ping pong table, right? That's what we are usually saying. But more or less, if we take out all of the small advantages that you can have, most often it's all about the money, right? It's all about the salary. Most employees we leave for the salary or for being too much under pressure, right? So it's all about, it's mostly those 2 points. If we make a summary, right, it's the salary or the pressure. If you're working in a big company, you don't have the same challenges as if you're just 1, 2, or 3 in your company. If you're 1, 2, or 3, you don't think about the way you communicate between each other, about the processes, about all that. If you are working in a bigger company, you instantly have to think about the good ways of communicating, how the people work together, how the engineers work together, how they resolve issues, how they work. And that's also something that I learned as an engineer, is to go from the strictly engineering to project management, and also how, as an engineer, I work with a startup. I like to work with startup as an employee, but also as a freelancer. The kind of processes, different ways of working. Something that was really an improvement for really strictly engineers and people coding stuff is all this pull request methodology. Because before pull requests,
You mean this?
in the code, I'm talking strictly about the coding. It was really something big for engineers to do this pull request discussions. It really changed a lot. Because I remember as an engineer, before that, all the engineers were pushing code directly. But then after that, we had this pull request methodology where engineers, they can create a pull request, and then they can push the code into a branch, and then they can have discussions together. You can have 2 or 3 different engineers discussing on a single pull request. And then at the end, it can improve the quality of the code, and also it can also help dilute the responsibility. Because I remember before that, you were pushing code, and then I remember if a bug is happening, your manager will try to blame only the developer who code this part. And it could be a bit stressful for the coder or the engineer. But then we had this pull request methodology arriving, mostly on GitHub and then on GitLab and the other versioning systems. And I think it's completely changed the way of pushing code into the project.
Mm-hmm. Same. Good. Time is running fast. So, final question in the job interview, not the whole interview, is what is your salary expectation?
I think I will give, if I was being asked this question in real life, I will give a range.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say between this and that. Yeah. I would look at the size of the company. I will not ask the same salary if it's a big company or if it's just a startup, because in a startup you have maybe often the startups have less funds, but they have small advantages. They are more agile than extremely big company. In a big company, you can ask bigger salary, but then you will have more advantages. As an engineer, you will have access to the ping pong table, like so. Yeah. So, and I will consider the size of the company, the location, and I will also consider if the company is allowing some remote hours or not. And about this question of remote or not remote, because it's also always trendy. You have people who are totally against. You have people who are totally for. They are not. There is not a single answer to remote or not remote. But if I'm being asked, I will say that it's still nice to have a way to meet your colleagues when you want to be physically with them. It's also nice to let some freedom also when the employee wants to work from another place, from home or from a coffee. And I would also say that it depends on your own personality and the way you are working. Some people, they are more productive when they are around the colleagues, and some people less. So it's all about yourself and the company.
All right. But we're done with the job interview. And now I want to ask your feedback. What are your impressions? How similar it was with your experience when you were hired and when you were hiring?
I will say as an engineer, usually the beginners, they ask a lot of questions about the technology, the stack, the kind of tasks that you will have to do. And as you're going more mature, you begin to ask more questions about the management style and the way HR is working in the company, and those kind of stuff. So probably I would have asked more question about what's the way, how you are doing the project management, the way you are handling the feedbacks of your customers, if you have good continuous integration system, if you are already processes in place, those kind of stuff. So that's probably the difference between an engineer and someone who is more a leader or a tech lead, is to ask more questions about the way you are handling your team, how you are, the processes that are already in place or not, if you have some freedom in the way you want to, in the way you do the processes and those kind of stuff, right?
Correct. But these are the questions that you would have asked. But if I ask let's say, have you had this kind of similar questions to what I have asked you in the previous job interviews?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, this was not for the like engineering position; it was for the leadership position in the technical team.
Mm-hmm.
But do you find this kind of similarities? Or it was totally different.
No, usually it's those kind of questions. You as a tech lead, you will speak a bit about, of course, the technology, the stack, also the way you handle the tasks between the engineers, the way the engineers are communicating with the other teams, the marketing team, the managers, if they are managers, the way the different processes from customer feedback to the final implementation in the project, the different steps from an idea to the final implementation. That's usually the questions that you should ask during an interview if they are not bring directly by the HR, right? The person who is doing the interview.
Great. And now the question that I want to ask you is more like advice from your side.
Mm-hmm.
The people who are watching us, they some are experienced, some are just starting, some just aspiring engineers, scientists. Let's say to those who are just starting out, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, that's a very general question. If you are just starting in engineering, I would say something very, very general, but continue to be curious. Continue to try to go outside of your comfort zone, of your comfort bubble. If you really like only one technology, don't be afraid of trying new technologies also, and continue to try to build your own ideas as side projects. Of course, it will be difficult for one of your side projects to become big, but it can always happen, and that's the best thing that can happen in your. I mean, for me, it was the best thing that happened in my engineering life. Continuing to be curious. Don't only stay in your bubble, in your technology bubble. Try to be open at the same time to new technology, but also to new fields. To understand also how design is working, or UI is working, or UX is working. That's maybe a good advice for engineers.
Thank you. Thank you for watching and listening us. That was an interview with Nicolas Blanco. And see you soon.
Thank you.